liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Opening statement. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Edison Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Board of Education administrative offices. Copies of these notices were sent to the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger on June 20th, 2022. The public may participate at regular meetings in accordance with the bylaws and the applicable state regulations. Thank you very much. For anybody watching that's unfamiliar with our Committee of the Whole meetings, we've been meeting on a consistent basis regarding facility improvements. We're embarking on a historic facility improvement project throughout the district that will touch every student that comes through the Edison public school system. This is very exciting. Between these meetings, Dr. Bragan and his team have a lot of work to get prepared. Tonight, as he has done at other meetings, he has a nice presentation prepared for us that is reactive to what our feedback was from our last meeting. And we also have another agenda item, which is the HVAC upgrades or potential that we could talk about. And we'll get to that after we do the first part of this meeting, which is the presentation. So, Dr. Bragan, if you don't mind, if you want to take the podium.
Roll call.
Oh, roll call. I started talking. Roll call.
Mr. Schneider?
Here.
Mrs. Madiker?
Here.
Mr. Shi?
Here.
Mrs. Peng? Mrs. White?
Here.
Mr. Mohan Patel?
Present.
Mr. Burrell Patel?
Here.
Mr. Rivera?
Here.
Dr. Haydock?
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, Dr. Bragan.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Board President Schneider. As you may recall at our last meeting, we went over some of the proposals that we wanted to put into place, and the board had some requests for us to get some additional information. So tonight we're going to present that, and hopefully at the end we'll get a consensus on moving forward on a couple of these projects and give the architects the go-ahead to start firming up the plans and come up with some exact blueprints that we can use to move forward and possibly get the ball rolling on some of these. It would help if I turned it on. All right. It's the simple things. All right, so we'll start the USA architect proposals that we went over last time. The first one was the John Adams Middle School Auxiliary Gym. And if you remember, we initially had a couple of options that we were looking at. The board suggested that we go with the, first of all, the board wanted to make sure the basketball court was large enough to play. It is the appropriate size. They wanted to go with the staging area, the warming kitchen, and also to make sure there were bleachers included as part of that. So we had our architect in USA go back and redo those drawings, and this is what they came up with. It's in the same location that we talked about last time. Front of the building's over this way. Okay, you guys have copies in front of you. This may be hard to see from a distance. And the cost for that, USA and DMR did it a little different. You know, the total cost they put in, including any furniture and items and, you know, soft costs that are associated with it, and then they had just the purely construction costs. Came out to $6.9 million.
What was the first?
Use your microphone, please, Mr. Rivera.
What was the original cost before we did these changes?
I'd have to go back and look at that, but the initial cost of just the gymnasium, I think it was 3.7. I can look that up if you give me a second. You want me to look it up now?
It's in one of the slides at the end.
That was, the proposal was 3.5.
Yeah.
That's what we budgeted initially, but I think it was a little more than that the last time. I have it, it's on the slides from the last meeting. However, I probably have that somewhere here too. All right, the John Adams, as it was last time with just the gymnasium, Mr. Rivera, was 3.5 million. So it was exactly what we had budgeted for.
Dr. Reagan, can you go back to the previous slide? So if you look at the slide on the two storage area, the gym storage and the storage there, across from it is nothing being built, right? Across from there. So it's a two-story building, John Adams. So how much will it be if, instead of putting storage there, we add 2 classrooms on each side and make it on 2 levels with 8 classrooms? How much additional cost will that be?
Well, I asked the architect to look at that because that was one of the things suggested at the last meeting. And again, I worked with the architects on this project from USA. They didn't think that was appropriate in this section here. However, they did look at potentially putting 10 classrooms here. I didn't go with all those and get all that proposal for tonight because that wasn't part of our phase 1 plan. But to do a 10 classroom here in this part of the building would be about 19,000 square feet. And the price was 11.5 million approximately.
So how's this traffic gonna flow if you put it there? Because you're gonna go through the gym, then go to the classrooms?
No, it wasn't the gym. Again, I didn't have that. I can get that definitive plan for you. Again, that wasn't part of phase 1, so we didn't focus on it. It was coming up over here. It wasn't going into the traffic out here.
Oh, it's not, okay, so it's on the other side,
Correct.
okay.
I don't have those plans because, again, that wasn't part of phase 1, but I did ask what that rough cost would be because I think the discussion last time was what would it cost to put here the classrooms that you suggested, and they didn't think that was a feasible option right there.
No, I was saying that replacing the 2,
Go
storage
two-story.
area.
Yeah, that's what I
and put a
said.
classroom there because you're adding that anyway, so, and this is 2-story, and do a 2-story that you can get, 4 more upstairs. The other thing is with the, what is this? The kitchen. The kitchen on the other side is sticking out. Is it possible that we can swap it and put on this side? So if we need to do something over there, you can still have a space to do it.
I think the idea was to keep that close to the existing building right there. But, I trust in the plan that they put forth as the most efficient. We could ask them to put it somewhere else if you think that would, you're saying that
I'm just
kitchen
saying it. I'm
should
just
be
saying
here?
it. I'm just saying, yeah. Because then you leave up the entire space if you want to do something over there. Now it's sticking out, and you can't do too much about it. You can't use anything in the middle, and
Well, the existing
It's
building's
sticking out.
here.
no, that's not, because you're coming out of it. The existing
This is
building-
this is the space right here.
The existing building
Right
is on
here
the
is-
left-hand side, yeah. Right?
It's right here. There's
It's on the
existing
right-hand
building right
side
there.
bottom, yeah.
The kitchen is right here. So it would be right here. So you're saying put it over here?
Huh? Yeah.
I'm not sure where you asked to put it on this side.
Yeah,
I mean, if you put it over there, then it's going to be disconnected. Right now, the kitchen is on the top, and then it's connected to other parts of the building.
is that
If
connected, is there a hallway connecting to the kitchen?
There is not a hallway, I don't believe there.
There is no hallway
No.
connecting to the kitchen, okay, thank you. So how do people go there? They're gonna go through the gym to go to the kitchen?
Well, the idea would be if we're going to use this space,
Yes,
you're not going to use it during the time that they're using it for a gym space. So you would use this space during the time of lunchtime, where you'd have food prep and you'd pick it up or however you distribute it here in this warming kitchen and eat it here during those gym periods.
yeah,
So
but,
this wouldn't be utilized for the entire day, and it wouldn't be utilized at a time when, obviously, when phys ed was taking place.
That looks like a hallway to me, no?
no, it's not.
Above the
It's a
kitchen,
walkway.
where there's a
No.
door.
I believe that's a door right
That's
to
an
the,
outdoor
I believe
walkway?
that's to the outside, and this is the connection here.
So,
Go
And
ahead.
also, on the stage part, all the way on the top over here, there's that goes, it says up. Is that outside the stage? Is this little thing outside the stage, or it's inside?
I'd have to check on that. I don't know if that's an emergency egress that needs to be there in case of fire and stuff like that. But the
Okay.
idea was, and these are really good questions, was for us to get ideas on what we want to move forward, get a rough idea on the pricing, and then my suggestion would be that if we give the architect the go-ahead to design their plans, to come back with their plans, and to really have that conversation with them, that they could answer all those architectural questions about structures and where to place them and why they were placed there before they finalize their blueprints.
That's why I suggest have the architect here so they can answer my stupid questions. So we don't want to waste their time on this.
Mr. Shea, I've never known you to ask a stupid question.
I
so.
do ask a lot of stupid questions. I'm sorry.
But I think that's a good idea. Again, in my estimation, and this is just Bernie Bragan's view, is that that's a little preliminary. Let's get the idea that, okay, we want to move ahead with this. It's going to cost about this much money. let's get them to flesh out some significant plans. If you remember the Lincoln project, when we got to that, and it seems like a lifetime ago, 2.5 years ago, when they came with their final iterations of the plans, they had 3 plans. You're right, they had, this one was, I forget how many classrooms, would cost this much, and we picked the middle one, and then that's the one we ran with. So I think the next step of this process would be to have a little bit more of a solidified plan. The architects come and they answer all the questions that everybody has here. You know, can we put that kitchen somewhere else? Is an egress required on the top of the stage, so on and so forth.
I just had one more question. So John Adams does not have 2 floors in the entire premises. It's only one part of the building, right?
At the top of my head, I think it's like an L shape, but I don't know exactly.
Because there are very few.
It's not the whole building.
Yeah, it's not the whole building. So where this new gym is, which part of the building is it?
If you're looking at the building, it's in the back, so it's hard to see that little drawing here, right? This is the current gym here. Right? This is the way you drive in, the parking lot, the long loop is over here. This is the front of the building right here. So it's in the back. There's a path out here that goes to the neighborhood. This area right here is currently paved. And there's a storage facility right there that we'd have to knock down. That's why they put the storage places over here. Mr. Calabash, you know that a little more intimately. Is that right, where the storage thing is, somewhere over here?
That's exactly right.
It's a shed or
It's a
steel
shed.
structure or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's a shed, and
It's a
also
shed.
there's
Yeah.
the garbage is over there.
So right now, this area is pretty much right now a pavement, and then the path out here goes to that neighborhood over here.
Just a quick question. In regards to jams, what is the crowding issue? Do we have an overcrowding issue there at the moment where the
course we
students
do.
are lacking space for classrooms?
JAMS was one of the 6 schools, we initially proposed that we were going to add classrooms to, and it's still included in as such. It just wasn't part of Phase 1.
Okay, so would it behoove us to do the phase 1 where we have the classrooms versus the gymnasium? Don't you think we would need the classrooms first before we do the gym? For them, they already have a gym and they already have outdoor space. They don't have the classrooms. So would it be possible for us to get the classrooms first?
Well, when we talked to the principals and we did our tours and got their feedback, their thought was at this point, they need that large area space as an immediate concern
We
for
also
for
forget
their
that
lunches and for
the
things.
gym is a classroom. There's PE classes there all the time. So it's a classroom.
I
It's just
think it's about the
overcrowding.
lunch, eating lunch.
That I was thinking about as well.
Because
So-
now-
Lunch is
Some-
definitely an issue
yeah.
there, and when you go there, it's definitely crowded. Their kitchen is really small, and it's hard to get that many kids in and out. But Mr. Patel, you're exactly right. There is a classroom issue there. It's one of the buildings that we are slated to add additional classroom space.
Yeah, so the kitchen, I mean, any kitchen we build, we have to talk to our food vendor to talk about what their needs are. I would imagine that the architect takes that into account, but, certainly if you're a food service provider, you're gonna be looking for storage, right? That's probably something that's lacking in most of our buildings, where they can't order enough product or as much as they'd like in order to keep it and hit quantity discounts and everything, the things that they need to do to run an efficient business. So I think that deliveries to wherever we put this would be paramount, right? So you gotta have a nice loading area so a van could pull up. If anybody goes to any of our schools during the day, you'll see a Machio's van, pull up to our buildings and unload. I think a loading area would be important, and I definitely think an interior way to get to the building and the cafeteria without going through the gym is vital. So, when we do, that's not a design thing that I think would hold up the project. I mean, but as we move forward and we talk to them, we certainly need to talk to Machio's and make sure that we have a way to get, from point A to point B. Imagine if they're preparing food and then they have to go outside on a rainy day to get to the cafeteria. That doesn't make sense. Or through a gym class.
Great point. And we would, that's a conversation we should have at the next level, is get Machio's in there, like we're doing at the Lincoln School, where we're doing a kitchen.
Right.
You remember the Lincoln building, they don't have a kitchen. I think their kitchen is basically the hallway where they roll out the carts. And, we designed the space first with Chartwell's, but now with Machio's, as far as how we're going to equip it. And, the builders had to make sure they had the appropriate electricity and water and plumbing, but the actual equipment, the refrigerators, the sinks, and ovens and whatever else you put in there, we worked with Machio's to order through them, and we had to make sure the fittings, actually, we had to modify a couple things to make sure they worked. But yeah, it's a great point.
Board President?
Yeah, Mr. Shi.
I just want to say, because right now the interest rate is coming up every month. So if we can expedite this process, them to start working on this, the quicker the better. That's, we don't want to just pay higher interest rate. We end up paying more, we got less return. So that's just a comment. If we can get the, the architect
Agreed,
here
yeah.
and, just do it all together and just maybe reduce one more month of wait, because it looks like we're gonna have another meeting next month to go to the next step.
Well, we don't have to wait a month.
No,
We could decide that afterwards, but I agree with you, the interest rate, although I do think they're stabilizing, and I think the Fed is getting to the point, but that's a whole nother conversation we could have about
0.75.
finance. But along those same lines, too, is the supply chain issues, and I want to talk to you about at the end. They're still pretty significant and exacerbating some of our current projects, so the quicker we get started, because I would anticipate in anything that we do in the foreseeable future, there will be delays. Delays in equipment and manufacturing, delivery, and everything.
Just another quick question, Board President. In regards to the classrooms, can we have the architect actually look into modular for at least this area? If we're able to do that, it could cost us less time and less in funding as well.
It's a great point, and it's a conversation I had with them already. The problem is the modulars right now, because of the cost of building and materials, is almost the same price as it would be for a steel structure. So if there's not a significant savings to the modulars, why would you do them? In the past, I mean, some of the board members are here, we could have got 10 classroom spaces and an addition put on for about $2 million. Those days are gone. That can't happen anymore. So I had that conversation, and maybe it's better for the architects to talk about that, exactly the specifics on why that would be. But the cost difference isn't what it used to be. It used to be half the price. That's not the case right now. That's what I'm told anyway.
Yeah, so
That's not my
one is the
space.
cost, the other is timing, right? So, I don't know in this one, is that going to be applicable to our schools to get modulars in here to speed up the time? Because I know there's a Marriott's building a hotel in New York, it's 30-something stories, that's all modular. So, so besides the cost, also the timing.
I agree. I think it's both, and they impact each other. And let's find out.
And
I mean-
maybe if we do another thing, which is where if we're actually putting an RFP out for modular companies to bid for it, you could actually go through it without going through the architects. You could actually get a better price.
I would disagree with going with modulars if the cost is the same, because the reason to go for modulars is because you're saving money, but it's inferior quality than brick and mortar and steel. So I would rather, if the cost is the same, I would rather just go with the traditional way, because it's going to be more long-lasting.
I disagree with that. If you look at modular, they're actually new stage modulars where they're actually much better than the brick and mortar. Plus, you could get it done faster, and you could actually get it cost-effective,
So
just to
if-
be on the safe side.
Yeah, so
I just wanted to let
if you Google Marriott New York Hotel modular, you will see they're building I think a 30-story or at least 20-story hotel in New York City, all modular. The foundation is not, but everything else on top, that's it. So
That's the future.
I think that's a conversation that we could have moving forward, and I do think the architects could give more information there. I know what I heard, if you just look at the Lincoln project, and that's one that I'm intimately involved with, as well as our team here. The prefabricated steel building is the gymnasium, which is equivalent to a modular. It's created off-site, and they come and just put it together. If you saw that video on the Twitter last night, you got the steel structure out there, but the prefabricated building is made off-site and delivered in pieces and put together, and that's typically quicker, cheaper, like a modular. That's the most significantly delayed product now, and I don't know if that's across all domains or just that particular style. It is what it is, and I think we'll talk about at the end some concerns about the projects that we're currently undergoing, but this is unprecedented times in construction, and the people that I'm talking with don't see it ending in the near future, which is something to factor in as all this getting back in a round circle to Mr. Shee's suggestion. I think the quicker we do anything, the better for everyone, because it's going to be delayed no matter what.
let's just look at all the options before we reject them. That's all.
Okay, if we look on to Woodrow Wilson Middle School, same thing, the auxiliary gym there. And I was given the charge of two things. One was to talk to the principal, actually three. Talk to the principal and make sure the basketball court was big enough, it is, and to add bleachers. I talked to the principal, she's in support of this, Mrs. Blevins, that it's in this location, that's fine. She did have one concern, was that the path and to go around here would be enough, and that's something I will review with the architect to make sure that's enough there. We redid that pathway a year or two ago, and to make sure there's sufficient space there. Because if we put it over in this space, then it goes into the soccer fields, and there's really no room over here due to the soccer and the cricket pitch and the softball field that's over here. So I do believe this is an appropriate space around here, but we'll confirm that with the architect before we would move forward. And the price for adding this additional spacing on this one, it comes at again, total cost with everything, furniture, everything is $4.4 million.
What was the, I don't remember this, what was the proposal from the previous architect when we did the, the referendum? Are they the same space we're putting? I thought they're putting it on the right-hand, on this right-hand side.
To
no?
be honest, I don't know that. I don't
Okay.
know where it was with SSP. I don't remember. But the difference between this and the last one was the bleachers to make sure they had that space there. It didn't have that space. That's additional square footage that we had to add. Okay. All right. The next one we had brings us to the DMR proposals. The John P. Stevens High School, we didn't really have any suggestions there. We thought it was appropriate as it was to move forward, and that's just the same as it was before.
Actually, I have a question for them if they actually here. For JP Stevens, we will have other plans to expand the spaces, like the gym and the auditorium probably in the front. It's not impacting. So if we're potentially next step is doing the gym, because we're doing for every other schools, is this design will accommodate that design in the back. And also looking at this picture, I'm looking at the bathroom over there for the girls and boys bathroom. So I don't know if you can see it over here on the picture.
The gang bathrooms?
Yeah, the bathroom. So they have the sinks all the way to the left-hand side to the wall. I'm just wondering if is there any way we can move the sink outside a little bit and put another stool over there for the bathroom. And it's the same question for the boys' bathroom. Can we move the sink over here to the entrance a little bit, and whether we can put another stool there to help with the situation?
It's good questions. Again, I think that, as you said, that's the reason to have the architect to answer that. Specifics with the bathroom, I don't know if there's requirements for how many rooms, how many gang bathrooms you have to have, how many stalls. I don't know all that, but it's worth asking. I know in the Lincoln project, we had a couple gang bathrooms that are part of that 10 classroom addition. I think there's 2 gang bathrooms, one for boys and one for girls, in addition to individual bathrooms, right, for staff.
Yeah, because the bathroom is an issue. We all know that. So if we can add it in one store, so that might help a little bit. That's just
Agreed.
a suggestion.
Okay, good points. That cost remains the same. Again, DMR did a little differently. They gave us a low and a high cost. Again, I would estimate the high cost because it's just better to overestimate than to underestimate and realize we need to find monies at the end.
What does the low and high depend on? Did they tell you that?
Contingencies, different expectations moving forward, not a lot. I could get into the specifics if you want on that. Do you want me to go over that way?
No, it's fine.
I have it. I didn't go over it specific, but
If
we
it's
can
quick,
talk.
then good. Then otherwise, we can talk later.
We'll talk later.
Okay.
The Herbert Hoover Middle School auxiliary gym, the conversation was to make sure it had the warming kitchen and to make sure, again, the basketball court was a sufficient size and it had bleachers and all that. So that required some additional spacing there. And, if you look at Hoover, this is the front of the building here. Gymnasium currently is here, right? And this is over here is our maintenance garage. And I believe, Mr. Cullen, is it right here where we put the new pavement for the buses, or over here? This one right here, yeah. Okay. We just repaved and put a new parking area for the buses. I think we have 9 of them that have arrived so far, the new buses that we ordered. So kudos to the contractor who they had to be guaranteed by June. You still got 2 days to get the other 20.
Are those clothing bins gone?
You always ask me a question I don't have the answer to. You know, they're supposed to be, we have the permission to get them out. I can't say yes or no because I don't know. I'll
That's 2
find
more
out.
bus parking spot.
Agreed. But this one was basically adding the warming kitchens and the bleachers, and we already had the connection there. So,
Can you go, sorry.
Yep.
So what is that little yellow area, on top of the warm kitchen? Yeah, those two. Those are closets for storage
I
and
believe
stuff?
that's storage, and this is obviously the connecting space here. I believe this is a glass hallway here,
Okay,
I believe.
okay.
Is that correct? Correct. And that cost, again, they did high and low was 5.5, and I would estimate the high part with, again, that covers everything, furniture, soft costs, engineering, architectural costs, and so on.
Dr. Bragan,
Yes.
sorry, just remind me something. Can you go back to the John Adams? Okay. So the two areas across from the two storage, right? Right now, it's a door to the outside.
Which one, here?
Yeah. Is this possible we can add some of those small classroom for those one-on-ones,
Like self-contained class or something like that?
yeah.
It's a question to ask. Yeah, let's see.
They don't need that much space because it's a smaller classroom. I don't know how big that is, so just a question. If we can add even
Okay.
one, because that area is not being used for anything. You're building the hallway anyway, so.
Actually, can you enhance that picture for a second? You could see probably the space that gives you an idea.
can you enlarge it?
Yeah.
Use the microphone, Mr. Patel, just so.
Can you enlarge that space,
Those are technologies beyond my capabilities at the
You
podium.
could just zoom in on your PowerPoint.
It's way up there.
What's
Way up
the?
If one of the administrators there with any tech savvy could do
What
that
does it say in the
Okay.
hallway? The white
without
hall-
messing everything
I
up.
didn't realize that.
Sorry.
There's a brave soul, Dr. Tui. We're going to miss you.
Nice work with you guys.
Can you go to this here?
No,
Tom,
it's all right.
Trying to zoom in.
if you can do this, Mr. Tui, Dr. Tui, exit out.
I mean, just right click and
Stop.
zoom.
Don't do it. You gotta blow it.
All right.
I can't even see what the space is.
I think if we give the architect the charge to come back with a plan in a not-too-distant future, we could answer all these questions with appropriate plans.
I mean, that's the door going to the outside, right?
I believe right now that's going to an open space right here. This is outside.
And what
The
does
building
that
is
say?
over
That's
here.
the
This space right here off the top of my head, Will, is that a connection there? Or
I'll
is that,
try.
that's
I'll
the
drive
paved
by.
area?
I'll drive by this evening and take a look at it.
This is grass right here. This is a concrete walkway, right? And this is the building? And this is the building, right here. Is that a yes or no?
Correct.
Okay.
Don't remember that after so many years.
All right, so that brings us to, all right, Herbert Hoover, we went over that.
You see how integrated the kitchen is with the Herbert Hoover one?
Yeah.
That's the way it should be. So DMR did a nice job, I think, integrating the kitchen space to the rest of the building, whereas the jams, it just seems like it's in no man's land. That's something I would want to revisit for sure.
Okay.
Right, Mr. Shi, isn't that what you were saying?
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
drive by this evening to see what it is, because I forgot how the.
This
No,
draw-
but-
this drawing is also
Back
more
up.
it's more to scale of the rest of the building, right? Because, you're squeezing this in here. This is definitely a much more limited space than you have at Jams. This is smaller than it appears here. So I do agree, this is more detailed, and it's easier to see how it would fit in.
Maybe sometimes when you have less space, you're better at
More
using it
efficient.
efficiently.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I think it also depends on what is feasible at that point.
also
Because those
depends on the
buildings have already been made, so you have to see what space is
fits in.
there, what
Yeah.
fits, what
Yeah, but at
fits in.
Jams, they should be able to figure it out. I don't know.
I think
I mean,
Jam,
Jams has very little land, I think. They don't have a lot of,
well, Jams actually had a larger open space in the end, so maybe they just made it larger because they had a bigger space there, to your point. So
Yeah.
we'll ask them, see what they do.
I think it also has to do with architects. Some have different mindsets of how they
Agreed.
view it, and that's
Yeah,
why
of course.
it's good to have like
Yeah.
different sites.
So bringing us to Thomas Jefferson, the board had given me the charge to go back and have them redesign some of this front area because they didn't really initially do that. When we had the conversations, what I found out was, if you can see
Can
this.
I go
here.
back to the, sorry,
Which one?
the previous one? Yes. So for the, I just noticed that, I don't know if it makes any difference. For the other schools, it looks like the bleachers for Woodrow Wilson, the bleachers is near the entrance where you're coming in, and this is all the way on the other side. Does it make any differences for the people to come in to watch the game? Do you want to be closer to the entrance, of the building, or you want to be all the way on the other side?
Yeah, I don't know that quite. We could find that out. I mean, I would
But
imagine.
you'll be, if the people coming from the building, you want them to sit on the bleachers is on that side instead of crossing the whole court and going to the other side. Maybe I'm too.
I think they have an entrance on the side. If you take it to
But you
the
gotta go
left,
outside, you gotta go outside and get to it.
but you have a parking space there too. They could come in from that side.
Looks like there's egresses here, but I would
There's-
imagine that most people would come through the building, right?
Right.
If you're coming to a basketball game or something, you're probably coming.
Maybe
through
there's
the-
not
walk
enough
around.
space, that's probably what it is.
Yeah.
Because you have the bleachers like so long,
Good questions. I know the space is definitely tighter at Hoover. And you got that Little League field right over here. That's
Yeah,
the
but
fence
this is-
line there.
It's the same footprint, it's just where to
Agreed.
place it. Sorry for these questions.
And that's okay. So Thomas Jefferson, the charge was, I was highlighting this area here because this is a stairway to the boiler room that I was told we can't get rid of. And it's an eyesore right in the middle of that, I don't know what they call it, the rain garden or whatever it is. It's nothing like a garden I've ever seen. But anyway, so we wanted to renovate this space here and make a new entranceway. Because right now there's an entranceway here and there's an entranceway here. So we require redoing this canopy here. We told them that we wanted the canopy because when you drop the students off, that's effective in not getting everybody wet as they walk in from the buses. So the entranceway and security vestibule addition would be here. This corridor would be a little widened here because this is one of the tighter spots in the building. And this corridor here would be made to connect to the new gym area, the new stage area. This stage would be demolished and renovate this space to make it a larger area here for the cafeteria space.
So how much time would that take? When you demolish it, what would the current students do?
Well, that's a good question. We'd have to obviously work around the schedule in the schools. We're not going to close the school at all. So I would imagine that demo could take place in the summer. I don't know that. We'd have to figure that out and get those estimates. And the same thing here, we'd have to, if we're going to do this at any point during the school year, this is the way we get in. So if there's a way to get this done in the summer, that's what we would profile. This could probably be done during school because it could be separated from the rest of the building. But those are the logistics that you have to work out, right, when we solidify the plan as we move forward. I must say that the contractors, I've only have intimate knowledge of a few in my career working at Lincoln, have been very good at working with the school. They're doing all that construction almost over a year now, and the entire time school was in place. Minimally disruption to the school. They worked very well with the principal there. So.
But
Just-
they didn't break any existing structure here. They would be.
They did, though. They broke
they did?
existing structures to tie into the current building. They broke
Okay.
existing structures where the kitchens go into the current multi-purpose room. They did, and so you didn't even notice that they did it
Yeah,
so
so
well.
that's good to know.
Yeah, they did do a nice job. They really did.
Again, the same question for this school. Do we have an overcrowding issue with this school as well? And if so, by how many classrooms? And are we able to use the existing space that we're going to demolish and converting it into something that could be utilized if we need that extra space for classrooms?
This school is not one that's slated for current classroom space. I wouldn't say any of our schools have space. This overcrowding issue isn't one of the most needy ones that's slated for classroom space. What happened here is, again, cafeteria, large group area, as well as some of the infrastructure. When you walk in that building, you go through this little corridor here. It's really tight. Security guard is right in the hallway here. There's a bathroom over here. It's just not the best way in. And then there's an entrance over here, so you don't even really know where the front of the school is. The sign that says Thomas Jefferson Middle School is over here somewhere.
With two entrances. Yeah.
So it would renovate the entire entrance, one, make it much more visually appealing, and also provide an opportunity to enhance the security over here, which obviously we don't have to highlight how important that is right now. and give us a chance to renovate this. This corridor is the tightest part of the building. If you have kids there, you know anyone that went there, you know that. This is glass on both sides, and it's very small.
So you're talking about the blue section that would be demolished, you're basically
The
saying?
blue section is going to be renovated.
Okay.
That's kind of the current iteration now. As you
Right.
walk in, you go right to the left there. There's the principal, vice principal, secretaries over here. I guess this is guidance. I forget where all the people are. The security guards in the hallway right here.
So what area were you saying would be demolished again? I'm sorry.
This area in the pink will be
Okay.
demolished. That's currently a
Gotcha.
stage. Right
Right.
now, there's a flag there and a picture of Thomas Jefferson
So you would expand
on the brick wall right there.
That would be expanded as a cafeteria, basically?
Correct.
Extension, okay.
So we would make this a much more larger eating area, and then we would make this a fully functioning stage connected back here, like a whole separate part of the building.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that we are expanding the hallway because that's a bottleneck.
It's a bottleneck.
Yeah,
Yep.
because all the connections going there. So the office part, are we moving it up or this is the same as before?
This office is currently right where it is. This
Oh,
is
we
the
are-
road. This is the road coming in. This
Yeah.
is the awning as is.
So we're just
with this
re-
area we're renovating here.
So we're not renovating the office, we just make it look better? We actually have room, you can move it up a little bit to make it a little bit bigger, I don't know if that,
Some of the constraints here, again,
Yeah.
this would be a good architect question, was the boiler room. There's steps to the boiler room here. There's a chimney that would have to remove. I think he's got it identified there. I can't read it this far away. But this is a problem. We wanted to just destroy this whole area, and we're not allowed to. So what we can renovate there, I think we're limited by some of the stuff related to the boiler that's in the basement.
I think the best solution would have been, and I don't know if that's feasible given what you just said right now, the two entries, if they could be consolidated into one nice entry.
That was the problem.
That
But
was
I'll let
actually-
them explain that, because we
Okay.
said the same thing. Get rid of this garden and make
Yeah.
this one big,
yeah.
we can't get rid of this. Or maybe we can, but it would be a significant amount of money, and I'll let them share that with you. I don't know, architecture is not my field of expertise. But they said this was a major problem. They could work around the chimney, they could reroute that, because there's a chimney, I can't see the drawing, is that it right there? But this part was a problem, because we initially wanted, we all talked about that, destroying this whole place and making this whole front one big area.
Yeah.
So another option would be the entryway on the left, expand that to the right, and let the rest be the way it is. So at least that could become the main entry at that point.
I think as we've all said, it may be good to have the architects talk
Right.
about what we can, because I met with them, and we went over it, that I want to get rid of this area here, and I was told that I couldn't because of these steps in the boiler. That doesn't mean, nothing's impossible, but I don't know how much the cost would be. It goes into a basement where the boiler is.
Oh, damn.
If you know the structure here, this building is like built into a side of a hill, right?
Oh, it's
This goes
going
down
down,
here. These classrooms are almost underground.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, so that one, it's significantly more square footage, so that brings that price, the high part, up to 8.3 million. All right. Deep breath for the sticker shock.
Well, at least this is not $1 million that's you,
All right,
you're gonna propose for the office space.
so the
For
suite.
the
maybe the
office suite.
I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Shi. So if you look at what we have here, I would much rather estimate on the high side. And if you look at the initial proposals, when we started having these conversations, very rough ideas for the things we proposed, and again, some of them didn't include the accoutrements that we decided to add, like the stages and the bleachers and the warming kitchens, and the renovation at TJ, the extent that we just went over here, comes to $50 million, about $51 million. The initial budget called for $33 million. Right now, in our reserve account, I believe we have at our audit at the end of the year, $29 million. Take out of that about $2 million that we paid for, $2.5 million actually, that we paid for Our Savior's Church, because that was done as of July last year, right, June 30th. So that money was taken out. So I'm estimating the reserve account about $25 million in capital. We have 7.8 of ESSER's 3 monies dedicated to HVAC that can be totally used for these projects to make sure the portions that are related to the HVAC in each of these would be attributed to that 7.8 million. So that brings it up to 32-ish million. And our budget next year contains $19 million in capital. 15 would be towards these projects and other things that we're doing. So that brings us up to, I believe, 47. So that's close without doing anything. That would be totally funded through next year's budget. All these bills wouldn't be due then, nor would construction most likely start in all these projects at that time. So we have the money to begin. As we move forward, you know, we talked about funding. Initially, it was a $93 million proposal. We could fund it over 5 years. I think on the July meeting, we're going to approve our bond counsel. We're going to improve our financial advisor. And I think when we get close to bringing these to fruition, that we need to talk about financing options. Whatever that may be, I leave it up to the board. I initially talked about a 5-year lease for some of the larger projects. That may be the way to go. I don't know if the board wants to mention that R word. I don't know that. That's for a discussion for another day. And I think we want to have the financial experts, as Mr. Shi said, with the investments and the interest rates going the way they're going, that they would have more knowledge and, you know, what those future things might be in a month, in 6 months, in 3 months. You know, that's their space. They would probably know a lot more effectively than I would to speculate.
So in plain language, what you're saying is that we could move forward with the projects that we discussed tonight with money that's basically in hand or will be in hand based on next year's budget.
Correct.
Plus
Now-
next year's budget, yeah.
Yeah, correct. So, and the bills, any bills that come in would be due, and we would be able to afford that with just cash on hand, basically.
Correct.
Now, in plain language, another potentially better way to do it, which we're about to embark on, is the conversation with the bond counsel and conversation with the financial advisor to potentially, as soon as possible, borrow some money based on our current tax levy. This is not going to any votes. This isn't going to, this is based on the amount of money that we take in as the school board and be able to pay down a short-term note, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be at hopefully a lower interest rate today than it would be, say, next year if we did it. So there is a sense of urgency, I agree with Mr. Shi, to have that conversation. Third option is that R word that you talked about, which is not something is on the table, just to be clear. I know I'm being recorded. But that's not something that we're looking to do right now. That said, the benefit of doing a referendum, right? When we're trying to be cute here when we say R word, that means referendum, right? In plain language.
Yeah.
And, that would go to the public. And the benefit of doing a referendum is that while it impacts everyone tax-wise, over the course of time, it's possible that we will save money. And if we go to referendum, there's some programming from the state that helps us pay a percentage
10
for
to
this stuff.
12%, yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, 10
Correct.
to 12%.
So about how much percent when you go to a referendum do you save?
It depends on what the project is. For new construction renovations, it's anywhere, depending on what it is, from 10 to 40% is the max, depending on what the
Okay,
project is.
so again, just to be very clear, as board president, I can't speak for the board, I'll speak for me as a board member, that a referendum is not something we're discussing as of today. But our responsibility is to cherish the tax dollars that we get from our fellow taxpayers and residents in Edison. So it would behoove us to have all of these conversations. And that is a big reason why this committee here is in public, so we can talk about this. And I don't know if anybody's realized, but we've had a really good working board meeting tonight, a committee meeting. So this is what it's about, right? Moving forward, though, is vital, right? So I want this board to really consider a consensus agreement for tonight that we move along with these projects to get this ball rolling for a lot of the reasons we just talked about, financial reasons. It sounds like there's some design nuances that we want to tweak, and I think that that's important. Like if we talk about moving a sink, if we talk about a bit of a difference in where we're putting a kitchen or something, that's not something that would hold our whole project up. That's something that during a design charrette or whatever, we're going to figure out what the best course of action is, and the board could weigh in. But if you always waited for us to do these things, it would take forever. So that's why in between meetings, it's so important that you and your team are handling this. And I think that we as a board need to trust that that process is being handled properly.
Okay.
Feedback from this board on or any questions about the dollars. The dollars are important, right?
Yeah.
So we need to mind those dollars, but Mr. Patel, go ahead.
Board President, okay. When Dr. Bragan first started with this school district, we were going through Jerry's referendum, basically, at that time. That was basically a $9 million budget add at that point if we were going to do it. That would have taken care of
8.3.
6 schools. What was our budget at that point, if you don't mind me asking?
270 or something.
270 something?
The total budget?
Yeah.
If you hold me to it, I think the first year's budget I was part of was 274.
Okay, and that would have added $9 million at that time and would have gotten all our changes, right? We waited 3 years, but we actually didn't get the referendum passed, so we waited. By this time, all those projects would have been finished, and we would have been paying for it. What's our budget currently, if you don't mind me asking?
The proposed budget, the adopted budget for next year is 301 million and change.
So basically, in terms of if we had passed Jerry's referendum, we would have been 6 schools already fixed by this time, plus the funding would have been there. So do we want to wait any longer? Do the kids need to wait any longer? Should we just continue and move it forward and get it done? Or basically go for a referendum again and let's get it done this time? I'm just saying.
Okay.
That's my point.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the plan is solid and if articulated, what happened before you, I don't think you or I were on the board at that, you weren't on the board at that time.
But I was close to the board at that time.
You were close to the
Otherwise,
board.
they call it Patel's referendum.
So,
I was actually begging for people to vote for the referendum so our
I
kids would
think
get the stuff
what
that they
really
wanted.
happened was that when you spend like 200 million, then people want to see a new school, and that was the main issue because with so much of money, we were not seeing a new school
No,
being
you were
built.
seeing 6 different parts of the project that would have been finished already. That's what would have been happening.
well, I think you're right.
Yeah.
So that's why I think there's an urgency to show our fellow residents that we're getting some stuff done.
Absolutely.
I think if I can interject again,
Yeah.
the question on a referendum or not is not for me to decide. That's for the board and the public. And as you know, I supported that referendum.
I would like to name
I
it.
had the sign outside
Stop.
that,
Stop
we
naming it.
I paid for out of my own money to get that passed. And
I know.
it still wasn't effective. But nonetheless, I think, and what I'm hearing our board president say too is, we have the money to do this right now.
Yeah.
We do. We have the money almost entirely in next year's budget to pay for everything that's on this screen. Whether we have a referendum or not moving forward is still on the table, because unless something drastically changes with this or in future boards or our tax support from the governor's office from the state, we have allocated in next year's budget, off the top of my head, I think it's $19.2 million for capital projects. That's not going away. So in year 2 and year 3, moving forward from today, you'll still have that money there. And if you wanted to do the referendum and fund $9 million out of that on an annual basis at no cost to the taxpayers, you could do a $200 million project.
100%.
And it would cost no increase. But that's a conversation, and I think we would have to gain the trust of people. I have a little bit of experience doing that in Hazlet. We did the exact same thing, much smaller scale. We were allocating every year $2 million for capital projects, and we told the public we were going to put all that monies, I think Mr. Colibus was the board president then, towards a 30-year referendum, and we got $45 million to do all the projects at once, and it didn't cost the taxpayers any additional monies. That's an option, but
And
that's a discussion with the board, and I think we have to gain trust of the public, and I think we're trying to do that now and having these conversations in public, because they're not going to believe me when I tell them that.
Yeah.
They're not going to believe you when we say, it's not going to cost you any additional taxes. Oh, sure it isn't. I know how you guys work, right? I mean, that's life.
And at the end of the day, the money that we keep saying we have the money on hand. Well, what money is that? That's tax dollars that were from
Correct.
our pockets, our collective pockets. We all paid property tax here in Edison. So that money has been obtained by us now that we are the board members, and we should look to spend it wisely. I mean, it's one of our biggest jobs, if not the biggest, is cherishing and spending these dollars to benefit these school children. So, I think building the trust is important. I also, Dr. Bragan, would ask of you, I don't know if anybody watched the news today, but there's a lot of chatter about the state budget and how they're allocating billions of dollars on the state level. And there's just, projects going on throughout the state that get funded. We had the experience here in Edison where we got more state funding this year based on our enrollment. But there seems to be grants out there. There seems to be one example of that is this ESIP project that we're embarking on, where we're using the Board of Public Utilities and so it's, when you do these types of infrastructure projects, it becomes, again, you're saving percentages here and there. Instead of just going to buy a boiler out of our account, we work with the ESIP company and we're able to replace boilers and obviously save money for the taxpayers. But I can't imagine doing this much investment on infrastructure and not obtaining some other grants, monies. I think the public is similar to me in assuming that if there's billions of dollars flying around New Jersey, is there a sliver of that we can grab? We have a grant writer that works full-time for us. We have very smart people in our business office. How do we talk to the people we need to talk to help us? We're on our own.
We'll try.
But-
Yeah, I agree with you. There's people, and I know Mrs. White is working with our liaison committee with legislators. We get them all the time. Try to get them to commit to giving us monies for these projects. I know we worked with, I'm going to say his name wrong too, Stanley Sterling?
Sterling Stanley,
Stanley.
Assemblyman.
And he asked me to give him a wish list on some of the things that maybe he could help us fund, and we did, and I think he's coming to our next
Yeah,
meeting.
he's supposed to be coming to our next meeting.
And the other, we had,
Rob Karabinchik.
and Mr. Pallone's office, Congressman Pallone came, and, so we're trying, some people would say that maybe that's a little greedy because we were on the plus side of significant increase in state aid over the last 2 years to the tune of, $24 million almost, to still ask for more, but I understand. Some people lost money from that.
We need more because we contribute so much.
Exactly.
I'm with you.
And we need more.
100%
We need more.
on board.
And when they give us another 5 million, we need another 5 million.
Right.
And we should always ask, and that's what our fellow residents expect of us.
Okay.
We're the ones tasked with making sure that we're dipping into every pot possible to decrease their tax burden. So if we could, I don't want to just, I'm saying this because we talk privately and I know that you work on these things, but it's important that we talk about it publicly, that
Fair
we
enough.
are working on it, and it's something that I think the expectation from this board and from the taxpayers is that we're finding every avenue.
We will try
to
to
try
get
to
as much
find
as we
dollars.
can, and I think the administrators in the room would tell you, if you ask them when I'm not in the room, that I treat every dollar like it's my own when they ask for things and request things for the departments. Is it ever easy?
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add, when we made these pleas, is that something that's unusual about Edison is that we are overcrowded, and we are severely overcrowded. And the money that we are getting right now, whatever increase, we deserve that increase because the funding formula says that we need to get that money. And for so many years, we were underfunded. So that is something we deserve. We are not getting anything extra. We deserve to get it, and we are getting it now. However, one of the arguments we can make is overcrowding, and that it is a safety issue. And every restaurant has a sign saying maximum capacity, and yet we have our schools where there's so many children, and if God forbid there is any type of incident, then how do kids get out? So that could be one of the ways we could actually set up a case that might work for us.
Right.
It's a great point.
And 100% agree with that. New school wouldn't help the existing buildings with the ease of that. So that's why we're working on all these schools, which is actually a great point. Just to add on to what Doug said, amazing. What you're saying is correct. But what we need to let the residents know is that they're investing in the future, and they're also getting tax revenue. What they're paying is actually they're getting back on their investment, basically, when they sell their homes or whenever they purchase their homes. They come here because of our schools. Therefore, if we don't invest in our schools, their houses are worthless too.
Great points. I think we're all in agreement almost, which is great. I had one more slide. Can I go on, or are we still on this one?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Brady.
Now, I don't know why the ESC is up there, because somebody, there it goes. The final part of Phase 1 was the classroom spaces for James Madison Intermediate School and John Marshall. I got rough estimates on those. They came in, as I said earlier, when we talked about the John Adams for 10 classrooms, it would be the same price, at $11.5 million. That's a roughly 19,000 square foot structures, and we're estimating high at 600 square foot $600 a square foot. That's for everything all in, furniture, soft costs and all that. Seems really expensive to me, but that would be for me the next step of phase one. So when we get another commitment to bring the architects back and get these ones going, this is the next one. And we're going to keep doing it at the same time as Mr. Schneider said, in between meetings, working and getting that going. So when we have our next meeting, maybe we'll have the final drawings and ideas for this, for the board to discuss as we move to more finalize the auditoriums and the J.P. Stevens project we talked about today.
It seems like as we get into this part of phase one, that's when the bond council discussion and the financial advisor really.
It's more numbers, right? And yeah.
Right.
Actually, it's interesting because I don't know that John Marshall as intimately as the JMI plan, but the JMI plan, there's a lot of space in the back there that could kind of go on while school's in session too without much disruption. So there's really not a delay except in getting agreement, the plans done, and the financing moving forward.
So-
Who are the architects for these two, or are they two separate
We didn't pick them
ones, or-
yet.
Okay.
That's rough ideas. You know,
Uh-huh.
that's, I spoke with USA on this one, but that's TMR USA, or if we want a third, I think we're going to have so many projects, we might actually need another one at some point.
Especially for these classrooms, if we're able to get some outside for modular, like, prefab structures, that would actually be better, too. Give us a better estimate as well.
Yeah,
So Dr. Bragan, oh, sorry,
good.
you finish.
I was just going to say, the modulars, and I know there's pluses and minuses to both of them, but if you see the classroom spaces at Woodrow Wilson and at the FDR building as they're being used now, inside, what the kids see and what the teachers see, they're nice spaces, and they enjoy them. They're climate controlled, and they're nice. We've talked about this. FDR from the outside looks a lot nicer because we paid for the facade. We, meaning the district, before it was actually right before I got here. And we didn't do that at Woodrow Wilson. It doesn't look as nice. So I do agree with everyone that the structures are different by design, but if there's a way to get them quicker, maybe, it's a conversation for the people in that space, I think, to give you their answers.
So, are the costs of modular high right now because of supply chain issues, or it's going to stay like that? Because we could revisit this later on.
I don't know that, and that's the question that I asked one of the architects, but let's get them both in a room and ask them those questions, because what I was told was, again, this is not my area of expertise, that it's almost the same price, so why even bother? If it's
Exactly.
going to be delayed and it's not going to be cheaper, all right, well, then I might as well pay a small bit more for a permanent structure. But I don't know that. Why don't we have them here and they could give it more honest answers?
Maybe even get a free prefab manufacturer here too, just to give us an
Sure.
idea or a presentation of what prefab or, modulars would look like and what the cost effective would, because they're the experts in their field too, so we might want to get their version of the story as well.
I agree. I had two more things that I wanted to say, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Board President? The Lincoln Elementary School, we started that probably around this time last year, putting shovels in the ground. We have another delay that's very frustrating for me. It's called the switchgear. I had no idea what a switchgear is, but apparently that's an important thing where you step down the electricity coming from the transformer into the building, and you need a switchgear, which is basically, in my parlance, a big panel box that the electricity comes in and gets parceled out to all the conduits that go to the classrooms, so on and so forth. It was ordered in October. It was supposed to be delivered in May. Doesn't look like it's going to come. So I'm going to ask the architect. It's not going to come until at least September or maybe October. So I'm going to ask the architect to come to our next meeting, or maybe if we have another committee of the whole, and talk to you about what our options are. We've already invested $160,000 or so in a change order to put the temporary structures in, so the classrooms will be ready. This would necessitate us having some type of generator on site to power the place until we do it. Let them talk to you about it. It's really frustrating, and I'm trying to go everywhere to find what I know is now a switchgear. I don't know much about it, but that's frustrating. And in the same vein, some type of computer chips that are required for the HVAC units at the auditorium and the two cafeteria renovations at John P. Stevens High School and Edison High School. We can't get them. There's a delay in either manufacturing, supply, I don't know. So that's going to impact those projects that the AC may not be ready to be turned on in September.
That's fine.
So it's frustrating, and part of me is like, perhaps maybe these people are hoarding it, I don't know. But I'm hearing it's across every building industry, every area, and I'm going to ask the architect from USA or one of the representatives, not more, to come to one of our meetings if we have another committee of the whole or board meeting to share with you, because it's an expensive option. And I don't want to make that decision without,
Did we have this into the contingency of their contract in regards to
Well,
if there's delays or if there's issues like
It's
this?
funny you say that, because the conversation I had
10%.
today was it may be time to get our attorneys involved.
Absolutely.
And, we'll see where that goes. But at the end of the day, that's the after battle, right? The current battle is to get kids in the building in September. So I don't disagree with you. See where it goes, but I'm just giving you a heads up. There's problems afoot that we have to deal with.
I just have one idea. If there is an empty building somewhere which is not being used, can the switchgear from that building be taken out and be used here? Like, you have so many malls now which are kind of empty.
Something I didn't think about. We'll ask them. We'll do it. I said whatever it takes. We got to find this. You got to think outside. We were worried about transformers because
Right.
the transformers we couldn't get. We have a transformer. Is it in? It's scheduled to be in this week, I think. All right. So look, that was the concern initially. Can we get the transformer? We ordered it. We had a delivery date. We were worried someone was going to give it to somebody else. As a fact, on the way in today, I was behind a truck with 6 transformers, as fate would have it. But anyway,
They were going to
Apparently it's a-
liquor school. You didn't know.
apparently it's a switchgear.
Dr. E,
liquor.
can you talk to Elon Musk and try to see if he could get some solar stuff here, please?
So, just to give you a heads up, and again, that's something, a conversation with the full board for a decision on that. That's I wanted to share with you that it's not good news, but it's news.
I have a question. So you said it's going to be a delay from September to October, but how long is it going to take to actually install it as well?
A little bit of time. I don't know that off the top of my head. That's better for them to talk about. Basically, they got to come, put it in, and tie everything in. There's a problem with that too, because you have to shut off the electricity. So that's going to have to take place on the weekend or some other time to get the initial hookup going. And we'll come up with plans. It's just a bump in the road. We'll figure it out. But it's going to be a cost to it, and I'm not comfortable making that decision without the full board weighing in on it. We've already invested some change order costs. It was supposed to be $8.8 million. We're a little over $9 million now, right, with some change order things we had to deal with. So that's a discussion for all of you to have and move forward. It's really frustrating, though, because it was initially the pre-engineered building was supposed to be delivered in March. This was ordered in October, was supposed to be delivered in May. Like, that's legit. They ordered it, and the people say it's not there. I'd love to sue them and do what we need to do because it's a breach of their contract. I don't know if we'll win. Everyone's going to throw their hands up. Hey, it's a pandemic, right? I don't know. It's frustrating, to say the least.
Any other questions on this plan? I mean, I'd like to propose, that it sounds like we have consensus to move forward to the next part of this, which would be a more detailed design and then also authorizing these architects to go out to bid. It sounds to me also that the board would like another opportunity to obviously weigh in before the finalization, all these plans are finalized. We could probably take some of the conversation from tonight and, I'm sure the architects could respond to that.
Okay.
So does anybody have any questions beyond? Do we agree?
Yeah, agree.
Good.
Agree. Yep.
But yeah,
Thanks,
just want to add some comment to what you said.
Yeah.
Dr. Reagan has a price tag of $50-something million, but you did touch based on some of the grants and the other thing that we are doing that will offset some of that.
Right.
The ESIP project we're doing, I think, could potentially offset that dollar amount, and also the grants we have from the
CARES grant.
Yeah, CARES grant. Those will offset of that, as well. So exactly how much we don't know, but that price tag is going to come down, just because all these additional things we are doing that will help.
Yeah, and I think that you've done a good job of articulating throughout this whole process that you're trying to err on the side of caution and go on the high end. You'd rather overpromise or what is it? Over-deliver, under-promise, something like that. So either way, you're.
I just don't want to screw it up.
Yeah, just like I just did that saying. So, so in general, I think that you're right, Mr. Shi, that financially, I think we're going to be okay here. Based on our current tax levy and everything else. So, any other further questions? We'll move along on the agenda.
I just have one
Yes.
question, not related to this actually. Just want to know the status of Edison High School auditorium and the other, I mean, you just gave an update for Lincoln, but any other thing that's going on, just status of that.
Yeah, those projects were moving forward, and, it looks like they were all ready to go and open for September. The HVAC renovations for the cafeterias at John P. Stevens High School in Edison and the auditorium. The problem is the chips for the air conditioning. So that may delay having the air conditioning, but it should be done. But it's frustrating because we wanted to have the air conditioning. First meeting in September, we'll be there. It might not happen. Maybe it'll be October.
Just pray that no more 100-degree weather.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so they're moving along. That's progressing, and we waited for school to get out for some of the other thing at Edison High School. If you remember from, was it Superstorm Ida? Was it that flooded out the
Small
the
gym.
gymnasium and the small gym, and we had to wait till school was out to rip up the old floor. That's under construction now. We're getting the space ready for us to do the work there to remove the old floor and put the new one in. So things are moving forward. It's busy.
I would recommend, a side note, I'd recommend following Will on Twitter, Edison Buildings and Grounds Twitter account. It's been some cool pictures posted a couple times a week, I think. Yeah, it's very cool. So thank you for that.
What is it, Edison Building Grounds?
Yeah, it's something B&G.
I can't believe you don't follow that already, Mr. Shi. You're a Twitter
I
guy.
follow yours, but you didn't follow that, so I didn't get that.
Edison B&G, something like that. Yeah. We'll have to get your handle there, advertise a little bit. We'll get your follower count up.
I had one more thing, if it's okay, Board President?
Yeah. We still have the other thing to do.
That's what I meant, the other thing. Can I go into the other thing, or you want to go over that?
Oh, well, I was going to set the table for you.
I'll wait.
All right, so Dr. Bragan and I spoke about the HVACs for the systems for the schools, that were better to say lack thereof, right? So we've maybe however many years ago I was a student at Ben Franklin or Herbert Hoover, Edison High, if somebody said, man, we should install air conditioning, it would have happened already. But it just hasn't, and the question is why. And it turns out this question was lucky for us. This question was kind of asked already before I got here, and in December, Dr. Bragan did a workup of how much it would cost to install air conditioning at each and every school. And we have a relatively detailed packet that Dr. Bragan gave us here that details. Now this obviously was exacerbated with COVID, right? So we have a real compounded issue. We're all old enough to remember when all the windows were open, the doors were open, we were sweating and nobody cared. Now we have school security concerns where things are a little bit more closed than we're used to. We have ventilation concerns as it relates to the pandemic and our health. So I don't think now is I think now actually is as good a time as any, if not the best time, to really move a air conditioning plan forward for our district. And we can't speak, this board can't speak for future boards. We can't say, hey, 8 years from now, this X, Y, and Z school is slated for an upgrade. However, we could at least put a plan together, put it in place, come up with some consensus, work with our ESIP company. So we have we've said ESIP a few times. That's an energy savings plan that's incentivized with the Board of Public Utilities. And we're working with DCO Energy on that. And that's been a really exciting exercise. And there's a lot of synergy between doing an air conditioning plan for the district along with the savings that we would have with this ESIP program. My understanding of that program is they don't necessarily, they won't just install air conditioning at no cost to us. So there's a lot more to it, but there is synergy there. So as we embark on this discussion and as you present it, I just wanted to set the table a little bit that not only are we already working on this a little bit with the ventilation and the utility work that the ESIP is doing, but also we're well aware that this is a long-term plan, not something short-term. So, Dr. Bragan, take it away.
Right. Before Dr. Bragan takes it away,
Yes.
if I may ask, last year we also did something with DMR as well in regards to ESAP and their HVAC and lighting and so forth. Did we get a report from them in regards to all the different ESAP programs that they were going to be looking into as well, so we could have a comparison of the two savings if
Well,
possible.
DMR did our ESIP.
They're doing it.
They're doing it now.
doing it
Yeah,
right
so
now.
they're the ones handling our whole entire ESIP program is via DMR.
But this is from USA Architects. What is?
Yeah.
This is just air conditioning.
I'll segue into that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, at some point, the board, I forget when, last fall or somewhere, it said, hey, what would it cost? Because I had no idea what it would cost for HVAC upgrades in all our buildings. You know, Edison High School was built in 55, I think, Thomas Jefferson was built in 59. You know, we have a lot of old infrastructure with boilers that are older than I am. And that requires us to, you know, really spend some attention, and it would cost some significant monies to change it. So we did ask USA. It doesn't mean we can't ask DMR to do a run-through and see, or another person to see what their cost would be. They went by each building, and the total cost to do all of our buildings was $76 million. To renovate the HVAC, though, that's not just the air conditioning, it's the heating as well. Because many of the buildings have univentilators where the hot water runs through those things by the window, and they're by the window for a reason, to bring in outside air as you heat the building, because you have to have, Will would know better, but the current exchange rate of the air and all that, even more important, you know, in the era of COVID and other illnesses that may come up. So it's a huge project. If you ask me what I would do, is I would do as the board president said, try to coordinate with the ESIP projects where they're looking at replacing boilers anyway and updating them to be more efficient, tie them into the same time at the same place, and do a building or two at a time. It's also very disruptive to the school. Again, I have intimate knowledge of this. The project we did in Hazlitt, we only had 8 buildings there, but it disrupts the school significantly because every classroom has a univentilator. So you got to wait until it's no longer cold, right, in April or so, and work at night and rip out all the old stuff and do the major construction in the summer. It's a humongous lift. It would take a number of years. But I think it's something that we need to do as our, you know, not getting political, but the global warming, and we have more warm days than we used to, and it's impacting the schools. And, you know, there's not a commercial or a residential construction project that's been done in the last 30 or 40 years that doesn't include central air conditioning. So I think it's something we have to look at as a long-term and do it piecemeal. I don't think there's a way to do that, because even if we had the money, if somebody said, Bernie, we have $80 million to put towards this, you can't disrupt every building. You can't. There's no way we could do that. I don't even know if we would get the contractors and able to do it in the right time, but I think it's the right thing to do. I think if we target buildings a couple a year, and like we do with other things, just keep going, and before we know it, we're done.
Yeah, so perfectly said. It's a productivity issue too. I mean, I don't think it's debatable that both our faculty, our staff, our students would do a better job teaching and learning if they were comfortable. It's a quality of life issue. I mean, we just had teachers teaching in masks for how many months, years, and combining that with our environment. It was obviously stifling for them. So, you know, heaven forbid it happens again. We hope it doesn't. But if we go back to a world where we're all wearing masks again, I think that if we, like you said, chose maybe a building or two each year to install air conditioning, to this board, I don't know how everybody feels. My suggestion, my idea, as I think about this, is to start with our least expensive buildings. So as you look at these numbers, you'll see a baseline cost of each, and then you'll see the punchline at the end. It says add 20% because there's other soft costs involved. So let's just take, you know, a handful of buildings. Let's just, you know, it seems to me around $2 million is where we're at. So if you chose, you know, 2 buildings, it might be in the neighborhood of $5 million for the year. And that would provide, starting, it seems, like the least expensive buildings are our elementary schools. Now, it's going to be a kicker when a kid's in 5th grade and goes to 6th and suddenly doesn't have air conditioning. But we'll get to those buildings. Hopefully the future boards do that. But, you know, on one hand, you know, I think there's an argument to be made that you go from the top down, you go from biggest to smallest, and then this way it touches every student. If you start at the high schools, but I don't know if with all of the other construction projects we're doing, I'm not sure we could afford that right now. That could change after we talk to our financial advisors and we talk about borrowing and everything. But for the most part, I think that this board now, as we currently have our budget, we could probably pick 2 schools to start out with and do it.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
My
Can
only
I-
problem with that would be if you do 2 schools a year, you're basically taking a decade out of the school system in regards to getting all the great schools upgraded. By that time, the future technology of whatever it is could be even greater. So that's, well, we definitely need to tackle this. But the greater question I have is that in regards to the electrical side, if all these different things, we're doing the HVAC, the COVID safety measure, filtration, and whatever it is, but each of these schools are going to need an upgrade in their electrical system in order for us to accommodate for
Correct.
the air conditioning. Now, are those costs part of the whole process, or is it something that we can bid out that can be done by different electricians to actually get the cost down for that and maybe help us with the costing for everything else?
I'm sure the process could be bidded separately or however you want to do that, but they are included in this cost because obviously anyone that has air conditioning knows in your house, you have to have separate electrical service for that. And, like I said, the buildings were built before air conditioning was commonplace. So in Lincoln, for example, a lot of people would say initially they wanted air conditionings in the classrooms. We don't have the power coming into the building to do that. And that's going to be the case in many of the buildings except for, maybe the newer ones at Woodrow or perhaps Monroe or something like that. But the electrical cost is part of that. You have to upgrade the electrical service and probably get some switch gears for these 2. I
Right.
imagine.
And the other thing is that we're also doing the solar panels on some of these building roofs in regards to that. So does that tie into the electrical cost? If it's
100%.
part of the process, we could actually save on that if we
Yeah.
needed to.
Yeah, and that would be part of that ESIP synergy that we would see where DMR and DCO will help us.
I think the solar people were on the roofs today. Yeah.
So in terms of,
Shipping.
in terms of prioritization, I think if we go this route, it would be good to do elementary for another reason because elementary starts later and ends later, so the buildings tend to get warmer faster. And for that same reason, you might want to do the second floors of buildings first, like for JP, for Edison High, for her. Like if you do the second, then automatically the lower floor will get cooler faster. So that might kind of expedite the process of cooling these buildings, but maybe not the whole building, but the second floors.
Good point.
Just a thought.
Well, President,
Yes, Mr. Shi.
I'm glad we're looking at the air conditioning. It looks like, USA did a lot of work with all the buildings. And I thought our ESIP, they're doing the similar things to all the buildings.
Right.
So I don't know if there's any duplicate work on this, so it's just one comment. The other is, you mentioned about quality of life and stuff like that. So the other thing we look at is besides air conditioning, the other is how many students in the classroom. If you have 30 students in the classroom, that's a problem we have. I don't know where the quality of life is. If you have air conditioning, it will help a little bit. But, we are addressing the overcrowding with the common areas. But we need to look at some other, the classrooms. We need to adding more classrooms in the school that's overcrowded. And the other thing we talked about is develop these kids starting from very young. Is a preschool, the pre-K program. We have the church facility outside of Menlo. I'd like to see that we put that into use, and then it goes to the segue of the Stoughton School. Where are we? This year we have not heard a lot of the conversation on that. So. Besides the air conditioning, I would like to have all these other things considered as well as the overall plan. What is our priority? Is that our priority to put more classrooms, to have less kids in the classroom, to offer more offerings, like not cutting back on the labs, and the AB schedule thing, or the priority is air conditioning. So that's something the board needs to decide. And work on it.
Mr.
Right?
Shi, I would say that you're correct in everything you said, but it's we have to do both.
Yeah.
And I don't think the priority should be prioritized 1, 2, 3, 4. It should be 1A, 1B, 1C. you know, when we most recently did the building tour, Dr. Bragan and Mr. Rivera and I went around, and I was surprised actually how, now I'm going to get killed for saying this, but I was surprised at how certain buildings were super crowded and certain buildings didn't feel crowded, the classrooms, I mean. And we would go into a classroom and then we'd leave and we'd say, how many kids were in there? And it seemed like some of the students' population, I mean, I expected every classroom to have 30 kids in it. And we found many that had 19, 21, 17, 23. And
It varies by program, too.
it does, and I think that our first phase of this infrastructure plan reflects what the priorities are. So, for example, it's clear to me, based on just the building tour and, you know, what I've experienced over the years, that J.P. Stevens is in dire need of classroom space, right? So that's why I think that was prioritized. But some of these elementary schools, like, you know, I think they need air conditioning before they need classrooms at this point.
Board President.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm sorry, one more thought. I think if we have a $300 million budget, which we've discussed, I think we should be able to find, you know, $5 million of that 300 to allocate to upgrading the air conditioning in 2 buildings per year. Where it gets a little bit trickier is when you're talking about the huge projects, which is your J.P. Stevens Edison. That's $14 million for J.P. and $10 million for Edison. That seems like a huge project.
All good points. Just if I could just add one for
Yeah.
Mr. Shee's question. This year's initiative was full-day kindergarten, and we are looking for preschool expansion as we go to next year and the year after. And you know, that may require additional spaces in addition to the church in Stellan, and we're looking at different opportunities, maybe lease space and do that, because there is preschool expansion aid monies from the state that's on the table there too, that would help offset those costs. So that is a priority as well.
Just to add on that, Board President.
Yes.
We're talking about HVAC systems and air conditioning. Have we looked into different options in regards to thermal vents that actually, when we had our meeting for the township liaison, I think Assemblyman Karbinczak actually added that he's working on projects where they have thermal vents, where they're taking advantage of the cool air coming in from the ground. And if we're able to do something that around all our schools, you could actually offset the air conditioning costs and getting all that HVAC system and everything by putting those vents in where you're getting the cold air coming in from down underground where we have aquifers and whatnot to bring in the cool air upstairs. So those are projects that the state's working on. If we could leverage that and get the grants and funding for that, we might even not need all this extra air conditioning aspect. And then we'll also have space for, we could take this funding and build
Sure.
more classrooms, by the way.
It's a great point.
So, you know, I guess what I'm looking for from this board tonight is, do we agree that we should, your point, I hear your point, that it sounds like there's other options out there. It's not just about putting a window unit in or a central air. There could be a third or fourth or fifth energy efficient option. There could be a program that we could tap into with monies. But I don't want to allocate our superintendent's and his team's time if we're not interested in cooling the buildings. Do we agree that the buildings should start getting cooled? Ms. White, use the microphone if you can. Thank you. There you go. Thanks.
Okay, let me, I don't have a lot to say, just a little bit. But I love this, this phase 1 and 2 that Dr. Bragan has put out. And I tell him to, he'll agree with this, that I keep telling him to keep his eye on the ball and not try and veer off. We have a plan, we should stick to it. As far as the cooling of the air conditioning for the different buildings, I think we should start. All right, if it takes many, many years, that's okay. That's the future. The schools will be here. We'll probably be in other places, but, we can work on this. And if we do 2 schools at a time, I think it would be well worth it. And Assemblyman Karbinczak did mention those things. I did ask him to forward all that grant information to me so we could give it to our grant writer. I'm waiting. And I'll gently remind him, but, and hopefully, that'll be beneficial to us. But we do have to start somewhere, just like we're starting with phase 1, with the buildings. we have to start with the air as well, and just take it one step at a time and just continually move forward. Everybody's ideas are great, and it's true. If Mr. Shee's referendum had passed back when he wanted it, maybe all those things would have been done. But hindsight is great. It's 20/20 every time, but unfortunately, we just, we didn't do that, so here we are.
We could
So
have
we're
Doug's
not-
referendum.
I was going to say the Virginia White referendum. That
No,
would
no,
pass.
I'm not, I don't think we should have a referendum. I think we're going to do just fine if we stick together, and I think this is a great board, and, you're all looking forward in the best way. And we will move forward with this, and we're going to succeed in this. We just have to be patient and stick together on it. And that's all I have to say.
Well said.
Thank you.
Dr. Haydock.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. White, excellent. A lot of the thoughts that I had in my mind. Great discussions this evening, and it's been a privilege really to hear some of the past dialogue. Obviously, I wasn't on the board, but I agree with Mrs. White. If we hold ourselves to altering plan after plan after plan, all we're doing is wasting time for our kids and our staff. There's not many schools in New Jersey right now that don't have air conditioning. It's a shame for our kids. It's a shame as an administrator that our staff can't get the full attention of our kids on a very hot day. The number one thing for success in our classrooms is our teachers. It's a shame that they can't come into a building and actually be effective as well as they're trained to do. So I think personally that air conditioning, the HVAC system is a huge priority for our district. Phase 1 looks excellent. I love the improvements from our last May 23rd meeting. There's a couple questions I had, but I can ask separate with Dr. Bregan. But I think we move forward. I appreciate Mr. Shee, your prior referendum put together. I wish that was passed. As a resident of the town, I did vote for it, obviously, for our kids in our town. But referendums to me are a little bit shaky. I think our plans are in place. We have the money. Let's move forward. That's all. Thank you.
Any other comments? Question, Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, I'm actually very proud of the meeting that we had today. I thought this was very productive. I think your presentation was phenomenal. And I love the phase plan, as Mrs. White said. Looking at the phase project, we are hitting and impacting schools with overcrowding. We're hitting J.P. Stevens, JMI, Lincoln, John Marshall. We're hitting all that. So we're on target on assisting with the overcrowding. And then I do want to say I would love to go forward with the plan. I think it's great. And also with the air conditioning, I work in a school district that has air conditioning, so I understand the benefits of having it. And then when I come to our board meetings and sit in an auditorium where it doesn't have any air conditioning, I could see the difference as well. So I think, just talks about how we could address the air conditioning at some point. But I think we made a major step here by creating these phases, and I think we should continue with that plan. And I'm very proud of the work that this group is doing. So thank you for your efforts.
We could do some air conditioning in this room too as well.
Any other comments? Mr. Patel.
Yeah, so, we all over here represent the constituents, the residents, right? So obviously, this is a very high-level plan. The cost would be best estimates, right, Dr. Bregan? At the same time, nothing can be sure, and nobody is paying this on day one. There will be RFPs issued, bids issued, and there could be so many questions about the design. As I have so many questions about the design, right? Obviously, I would encourage everyone to reach out to Dr. Bregan. I'm pretty sure he will not mind taking us to that school. We can visit that. We can look at each and every area. It's a summer break. We can spend hours during our daytime. And any suggestions, we can obviously provide that to him, right? And I'm sure he will communicate that with the architects. But I think it's a high time to move on, seriously. And, let's move on with this plan, because we need to get this started. And I'm going to ask Dr. Bregan. We'll probably visit a couple of schools, and any questions that I have, I will address it to you. But I think in general, we should move on with the plan.
Very good.
Board President?
Yes, Mr. Shee.
I think that when we had the meetings, 3-4 months ago, we all agreed to move move along with the plan for the phase one and phase two, right? It's the end of the day of just how much it is and so on. So nobody's debating on that. You know, the thing is, this new air conditioning got added on, this additional $63 million. And we also have the ESIP going on, so, you know, I don't know what is what we try to get from the board on these air conditioning. We saying that we move for tomorrow on these air conditioning, or we wait for the ESIP plan and see how we're gonna address that. The other thing is that, you know, you mentioned that, you know, some of the board members, I forgot who mentioned it, that you go to the schools that some of the schools are not as overcrowded as they thought. But the other thing is, some of the elementary schools, let's keep in mind, we are adding full-day kindergarten, so we are getting more students in there. So let's get a total number of the students in each classroom, you know, in September, and let's see what the impact is. Because, you know, we did not, for some of the schools, we did not increase the classrooms. We're putting more students in there, so what you end up doing is putting more students into the same classroom and free up the space for the full-day kindergarten. So, you know, let's see what that is. Then let's see, you know, should we just go ahead and just do these air conditioning, or we should just put some money to add the classrooms and at the same time do the air conditioning. So that's just my
It's a fair point, and believe me, I said before I'm going to get killed for saying this, and that's fine. If anybody's watching this and they're like, he thinks that our schools aren't overcrowding, I'm okay. Believe me, I know the schools are overcrowded.
Well, the enrollment's
So-
also different this year versus next
The
year.
enrollment's different, and we're obviously adding full day. I'm aware of everything, and I hear you loud and clear. What I'd like to do, and I think what our job as a board is to guide Dr. Bragan and his team. And I'd like to guide them to cooling our buildings down. And if that means 2 buildings a year, if it means 1 building a year, to me, we should maximize our efforts to cool the buildings up to the point that we could afford. We don't have an unlimited pot of money, but I want to make sure that this board directs the administration to make that a goal. It sounds to me like the answer is yes. Now, that could go through the ESIP.
Yeah, how's
That
it
could go-
funding it? At the end of the day, how much is it gonna cost to do it? Nobody is saying no, not to cool our schools.
Correct.
Of course, let's cool our schools.
Right, but I-
We're the 21st century, let's do it.
But if we don't say-
How are we gonna pay for it? That's the thing, right?
Right, so, I mean, if you know, if we don't tell them to do it, then they're not going to work on it.
Well,
Can I add
let's-
something?
Let's tell Dr. Braden, work out
Am I
the
right?
number. At the end of the day, it's how much it is gonna cost.
Yeah,
and
so
how to pay for it.
So I'd just like to add my 2 cents. Obviously, we have this phase 1 and phase 2, which is taking care of the overcrowding. We've had those detailed discussions earlier. Dr. Bragan has presented the plans, and all of us agree that overcrowding is, we have to go ahead with it and make sure that all of that is done. I would just advise, or just, you know, recommend, or, you know, just my 2 cents, that let's not get daunted by the big ticket item of 63 million. Let's look at the cheapest building. It's 1.6 million. For Woodbrook School, it's 1.6 million. For Lincoln, it's 1.7 million. We spend that much in buying laptop computers. We spend that much in buying
Right.
textbooks. So, you know, so if we look at everything together, it's going to look like, oh, it's a lot. We can never do it. Let's not have this as a goal. Let's have this as a goal, and let's look at it piece by piece. And, you know, at least let's have a plan.
Right.
Because we don't know, you know, what days we can't have school, or school needs to be closed for whatever reason because it's too hot. So that's what I would say.
No, I believe we've been discussing about air conditioning for a long time, and we actually are looking for plans of putting it in, whether it was this board, the last board, when he was board president, we were also looking at air conditioning to be put in. It's not just a new thing that we're adding on. What we're saying is, we're looking at USA's proposal for HVAC. We have ESERS from DMR. Let's put all that together. Let's find out where the cost effectiveness is. We're not talking about not putting air conditioning. We want air conditioning in all our classrooms. I'd rather have 19 schools get their air conditioning at the same time versus 1 or 2 every year. There's possibilities to get funding for all of this. With the options of Assemblyman Karbinchak and putting in different ways of getting the venting in and getting different cooling systems, even opening up our corridors could help ease the heating process in there too. Like if you put 2 classrooms that we discussed in JP, you open up that corridor, you're actually getting airflow coming in rather than being stagnant in there. So it's not about not putting in air conditioning. We want all schools to get air conditioning, and no one is saying no to that. The thing that we're saying is that there's options available. Let's look at all the options. We want to get more funding from somewhere else versus us having to go out and get more funding from our town residents. That's one thing. The other thing is that, you know what, phase 1, phase 2, let's start it. We're not saying no to start it. We all are agreement of starting that. We want all our schools to be cool. And the problem is, let's find the funding for it where it's the least costly to our tax residents. That's what we're saying.
Board President?
Yes, Mr. Shi.
I just want to put on record, because I know what's going to happen this time, what I just said. I'm going to put on record that I'm not against air conditioning. I'm not against air conditioning, right? It's just how to fund it. How to fund the air conditioning.
Jerry's referendum.
It would have funded it 3 years ago.
Jerry's referendum would have paid for
Right,
it.
so-
And no impact to taxpayers.
But-
Because it's all, the extra state aid will pay for it. So, but that's
To me,
water under the bridge, we're not gonna go to there. So it's a
I
moot
think the
point
whole
to
idea is
discuss.
just
But-
do our homework.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about this air conditioning project is that by its nature, it can't be done fast. So you could only go so fast with it because it's so disruptive and we have so many buildings. It would be a 10-year project probably, even if everything was paid for in one lump sum. So you might as well spread it out and have a plan in place. I don't know if that means Dr. Bragan should actually put together a document where it has a plan, which buildings get done which year. Different technologies. I think Mr. Patel's point is correct that, 5 years from now, there might be a better way to cool a building than there is today. And we'll take advantage of that. It's just a matter of having a plan. I think our task as a board is to have a plan.
Right.
Yeah,
Just-
so had a plan and how to fund it, right? So that's the key. How to pay for it. And we have the ESIP that's coming up. I hope that will help with this. Maybe that will reduce some of this as well. Again, I'm for air conditioning.
We hear
Let
you.
me say it one more time, okay? But how to fund it? That's my question.
Okay.
There's a piece of this,
Just-
though, with the phase 1 construction. If that has to do with the HVAC, we might be doing double the work if we do phase
Correct.
1 and then do the air conditioning. So it all has to intertwine anyway.
Correct.
And that could help with the building, so.
Just to add on, if I may, the other thing is, right now, we have a lot of classrooms that have their lights on, Dr. Bragan. I think we should be able to turn all those lights off and save a lot of electricity for our costs basically right now, and that could help with the air conditioning costs too.
There's also
So
grants
let's
for
turn
that.
off all the lights right now. No one's in the classroom. Every school at night I see, even in Menlo Park School, I see a bunch of lights on. So let's see if we could turn all those lights off when
We'll
there's no
revisit
one in
that.
the classroom.
That should not be taking place because we have people that are supposed to be doing
Okay.
it, so we'll go over that.
Please.
But if I can make a comment, Mr. Board President?
Dr. Bragan.
It's just refreshing to hear, because I think almost everyone here is in agreement. We really are, as much as we're saying different things and different nuances about finance, and it's interesting to see that. I think we all
I'll be on
agree.
record that we should do Jerry's referendum again.
Yes.
And you talk
also-
about changes in air conditioning. When I was younger, my dad would take us for the 460 air conditioning.
Right.
Would get in the Ford, roll down the 4 windows, and do 60. And we
Right.
thought that was great.
That was
My,
awesome.
how far we've come.
That's good.
And my suggestion is, instead of doing 2 schools a year, let's do 5 if we're able to do it. This way we could get it done faster.
Can you talk to Mr. Shi about that?
Mr. She's all ready to do it. He just said it. He's for air conditioning. 4th time around.
All right, very good. Do we have any other comments, questions? Do we have any public comment? Ms. Podofsky?
I feel like going back to the future again. Many years ago, when I came here, so my daughters could get an excellent education in an excellent school district, it was, and they did, but it was very hot in the schools. And a group of parents started complaining about it. And they performed a miracle. They got fans for every classroom in the school. And then the Board of Ed made them pay to install the fans. Even though a lot of the fathers that helped raise the money for these were owner electrical companies, all these things. But we did it. We cooled the schools off. And what happened was we dropped the ball. We thought if we got the schools to cool it out so the kids could learn better, and it wasn't, probably when we first moved here, it wasn't that bad, but we got that series of really cold winters where you had to go to school until almost July, and then it got really unbearable. And so, but no one thought, well, we got all the schools have a fan in them, and first of all, the fans break, blah, blah, blah. But we didn't think about the fact that we should not have stopped back then. And I've had some discussions recently because the parent, the PTO parent, who kind of led the movement, was also a Board of Ed member, Nancy Gulia, and she's now working in a public school as a substitute and dealing with the heat, and probably would appreciate that. But what you got, all these great ideas coming out tonight of what you need to do and what we need to do to move forward. But you also have to fix something in the board. Doug came up with some new committees this year, and you have different committees each year. But what you don't have is the team that would start looking, whoa, how are we doing on keeping up with this, the heating, the this, the overcrowding, the this. You need to never drop the ball. You got to keep bouncing it all the time, because you can do all this, and when it's all done, you got to keep doing it, because that's why we're back where we were. And it would be really nice, but if we could continue and maybe have an official position on the Board of Ed that is like a parent rep. Maybe they don't have a vote, but they come to all your meetings, and they could really help get get the parents and have a parent more involved, have the parents more involved, because a lot of the parents around here have influential positions and everything. But I just want to end on a positive note. That lady I told you about, who was a PTA president, while I was a teacher and a PTA president, and she was also a board member. Her son is now married to my daughter, and my wonderful grandson is the product of the two of them. And so I don't know if we'll be able to suck her back in again, but you just want to keep getting some more parents, local business sponsors. You need to have like a kind of core. They don't always come on the board, but if you had them here behind you to keep helping you with these things, it might keep us from falling so far behind. I don't think we can blame it all on COVID. Thank you. But good job.
Thank you, Ms. Podofsky.
Mrs. Podolsky, I missed some of the conversation, but I heard the later end of that. So maybe we can open up, we're putting all the air conditioning and stuff like that. We can open up for local business, name a classroom after them. Doc Schneider's, heating and cooling classroom or something like that.
I was thinking the same thing when she mentioned that, and how many, what the legality and the mechanisms are of getting corporate partnerships and all that good stuff.
Perhaps
I would imagine it gets-
SHI International?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure, yeah, that's a
Or
record.
Amazon auditoriums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think any methods of funding should be on the table at this point.
We
as
talked
creative.
about what was it, buy a seat for Edison.
Save our seat.
Save our seat, I'm
He
sorry.
loves that idea.
Save our seat for the auditorium, So, yeah, it's done before, and let's see if, how we can continue. Now it's besides the seat, let's go for the classrooms. Or someone who wants to put more money into it, let's name a auditorium after them, or a gym after them, or whatever.
All right, very good. Anybody have any
$1,000
other
seats.
comments regarding this agenda tonight? Very good. Motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Second?
Second.
Motion.
Mr. Rivera, second. Roll call, please.
We're still doing,
No.
oh, we're not.
We're adjourning from here.
Okay. Dr. Haydock?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Burrell Patel?
Yes.
Mr. Mohan Patel?
It's only 8:44. Can we stay till 10:30, please? Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mr. Shi?
Yes.
Mrs. Madiker?
Just one comment. Yes, we had a process in place, and if that process was honored, then we would have stayed till 10:30. Unfortunately, we can't stay until 10:30 because some board members did not return the evaluation, which was due to the New Jersey School Boards Association. So we have to, not meet. Yes, we have to adjourn. And I hope, anyway, yes.
Okay. Mr.
Yes,
Schneider?
and yes, thank you. Meeting's adjourned.